Hey everybody! Welcome to Obscurities in Miniatures. Today we have a very important topic to discuss. And I've mentioned it many times, and if you've watched any of my videos before, you've probably heard me lament the fact that we really have a serious lack of nice, simply designed, standard-looking samurai models to print, or just in general on the tabletop. And lo and behold, my cries for nice looking models seem to have been heard by someone. They have not fallen upon deaf ears yet, and even if I had no influence whatsoever, I am still going to smugly take credit for it because it's something I've really wanted, and I am glad to see that somebody is finally starting to put out some samurai models for the tabletop. And I speak none other than Kyoushuneko Miniatures. They have been relentlessly over the last few months starting to put out nice, solid samurai models. And when I say simple, I don't mean in the fact that they're lacking in detail, but the fact that they're not like crazy, overtly ornate. They look like very traditional samurai put through a fantasy filter. I think this guy could work in a lot of cases. Yes, I did not do the best cleaning job, but that's why he's not primed yet. I just wanted to give you all a good glimpse. So, one of the nice things about Kyoushuneko stuff is that they've been putting out a variety of different units. Now, their first models tended to be very modular, but lately they've switched away from doing modular to a lot of fixed pose stuff, which has its advantages and disadvantages. I know some people feel very strongly one way or the other, but when we get everything, when it boils down to it, do I get a bunch of cool looking models? And the answer is yes, then I'm going to be okay with it. Sadly, I had quite a few random print errors on these guys. Hopefully it was just me. I know at the time I printed these, I really needed to change the sheet at the bottom of the vat. So I'm going to chalk up a lot of that to that, and the fact that I never really lowered the lift speed on the printer probably is not helping the situation much either. So one of the first things that I noticed is you have your traditional samurai with swords, samurai with guns, samurai with spears, and then there's poses of every variety. There's about at least 5 or 6 of each pose, I believe. And then, unfortunately, this guy failed, but there are samurais with bow as well. And arrows, obviously, because what good is a bow going to do you if you don't have any arrows to shoot it with? So that was like the first batch. We had, actually, not just on foot. Here's one of the daimyo figures. You'll notice I have them on a variety of bases just to see what would work and what would fit. Again, I feel like the poses are quite varied, which is nice. So you have a bunch of different head options, and if you start reversing and mirroring things, that's going to add to the variety as well. Again, I need to do a better job of cleaning up, but I just wanted to give you guys a good opportunity to check this out. Again, I ended up with some weird print errors, and I'd like to point those out. Is it absolutely salvageable? I'd say so. I don't think it's going to be a huge mess, and especially if this guy is going to end up embedded in a dedicated unit, if I multi-base them, you know what? Nobody's going to be any the wiser unless I'm like pointing it all out, So, like I said, we had originally all of the infantry. These weren't the first, actually. First, before we even had infantry, there was a whole entire run of cavalry, both on regular traditional steeds and then on fantasy kirin, which I thought was a pretty cool touch. And in addition to that, there's been a whole release of ashigaru models as well. So if you want your more peasant levy, less disciplined than your samurai gun line, that's another option you can do too. And I noticed, I haven't printed any yet, but they've got now the sohei warrior monks as well. So you can really, I think, just about recreate anything in the Warring States period. And then to add to the fun, they even started doing a set of Ronin. So if you wanted to have some wandering swordsmen, and again, I have a couple printing errors here and there. One of his swords got shrunk down, but, if I don't mention it, I don't think most people are going to realize that or point it out. I thought the Ronin were a lot of fun myself. His hand got flattened here, but, again, not a big deal. You want to have a bunch of them all in a unit. My favorite of the bunch was the Ronin champion, obviously, with his Oni mask. You know that I love that. All kinds of weapons on this guy. And he came out nice and neat in a one piece, and I think I need to clean off. There's a little connector between his tooth of his mask and his shoulder bear, so we'll have to get that fixed. In addition to that, there's been another release that Kyoushuneko has started up with, and that's Imperial Chinese. Now, these guys look a bit more fantasy than what my view of traditional Chinese, warring states or any imperial dynasties models might look like. But I'm okay with that because you know what this guy looks like to me? Pure dynasty warriors. And yes, I do need to clean up a little bit still there. That's no big deal. But these guys, I feel like, are just screaming to get printed up in giant piles and batches on multi-based sets in order to get killed by the hundreds and thousands in proper Dynasty Warrior style gameplay. And if that's something that is interesting to you of wanting to print giant piles and batches, one of the nice things about Kyoushuneko models is that they're already pre-supported in a variety of sizes. These guys are all at 32 millimeter. We'll grab some other models to show you how they scale up in just a moment, but they are also available in 28 and 15 millimeter as well. So I think if you wanted to go with the smaller one, put them all in batches, that might be an interesting way to do it. I definitely think there's a possibility there. And there was also an Oni model as well. Unfortunately, I had some errors with her hat on her back and her arm, but I think it's still salvageable as well. She's a lot bigger, obviously. I love my Oni. So if you're curious, how are they going to stack up size-wise to some of the other stuff out there? Well, if you know me, I've got plenty of goodies sitting here waiting to get shown off for just that purpose. So we'll keep a Ronin and a regular samurai for that purpose. I have a Warlord Metal Test of Honor guy here. We've got my exclusive GCT Studios Bushido guy. He's either Mifune or Toshiro. It's one or the other, I can't remember which, but he was an exclusive kind of like convention guy. Hopefully with the convention circuit starting to slowly open back up again, he should be available online because GCT Studios is in England and I'm not, and I was able to get it, so keep that in mind and do check their website. Grabbing a good old-fashioned Legend of the Five Rings samurai here. I want to say it's probably a crab guy with that heavy armor. What else do we got? A GW human. So if you wanted to put together some kind of like a fantasy Cathay army, hey, you know what? With your Imperial Chinese guys that they've already been printing and some of the swordsmen, you could probably cobble something together if it wasn't the most accurate, historically. But then again, it's not like Cathay and Warhammer are the most historically accurate to begin with. Here with a North Star Mini. Now these are scaled at 32 millimeter, but to me they seem kind of short. It could just be me. When I think 32, I start thinking stuff like Conquest, but they're like at their own scale anyway. So that's a totally different story. With a WizKids human here. So I think, for me at least, the 32 millimeter stuff is really the way to go. With maybe the 28 millimeter might be a better choice if you want to have fighting Romans. I don't know. Whereas I think the old War Games Factory / Warlord Test of Honor models in plastic are probably going to be closer to the 28 millimeter. That might be a better choice. They look a little bit smaller in comparison to the prints there. Another thought might be these might be good models for Forbidden Fortress with the red Ronin here. The Flying Frog sculpts do tend to be a little bit larger, but on the other hand, these might make a nice group of assorted villains or bandits for the heroes to fight. Of course, if you really want to go out there and throw in like some Kingdom Death stuff, then we're going to have issues. But, that's always the case, Kingdom Death being a lot larger. Or if you really want to go hardcore and have some big monsters to fight, like the Bite the Bullet Dragonborn Oni, one of my personal favorites. I guess that's what a good option to have the Oni hanging around for then. But yeah, honestly, I've barely scratched the surface of all these releases, but I really wanted to just get word out there since we do have a lot of eyes that tend to watch this channel. Wanted to let people know that this is an option if you have a printer or if you have a buddy that has a printer. I think it's time to start begging, borrowing, groveling, whatever you need to do to get some of this stuff printed. So obviously, we will have a link down below to both the Patreon page for Kyoushuneko as well as their My Mini Factory or Linktree or whatever they have their models. I know that I found some freebies all over the internet, and once upon a time they did an entire dwarf samurai army of both male and female dwarves, and I know those are modular because I had those, and I don't know where I put them. I was all set to do videos on them, and they have disappeared, so that means they're probably all parted out in a bag somewhere in my garage. So you know what? Maybe someday when I find them, we'll still do a video on them, but hopefully by then we'll have some of these guys all painted up. Because I gotta say, they're a lot of fun. They have a very nice, distinct look to them. They're not overtly ornate and flashy in fantasy, but I think in a pinch, they could probably fill in for both a fantasy and historical game. There's definitely no like magic weapons or anything like that. And I mean, yeah, there might be a couple missing bits here and there if you wanted to have a full-on, you know, super traditional army or fighting giant, you know, kung fu salamanders. That could be your thing too. It's definitely worth a look. And like I said, there's a ton of units that have been released at this point, and it looks like they're just going to keep on churning out more. So definitely something to keep your eyes out for. With that said, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures, saying thanks for watching, and we will see you back here soon. Bye-bye.